What are the core issues surrounding short-term vacation rentals in South Lake right now, both in the city and in the county?
Yeah, man, this is a big issue nationwide, very controversial. And South Lake Tahoe sort of kicked it off for the rest of the basin. We have five different jurisdictions. And even though it was talked about, it wasn't really until 2018 when a citizens driven ballot initiative hit to ban vacation rentals in the city of South Lake Tahoe, and that was Measure T. And people were upset. The nuisance was the big thing, just partiers living next, partying next to you while you got to get up and go to work the next morning. There was some rules and regulations, but no enforcement, and it got out of control. And people were forced to go there. And that was just in the city limits, right? So the South Lake Tahoe, you said city and county. We have two jurisdictions. We have an incorporated city that was just the city limits, nothing to do with the unincorporated that we refer to as the county. And it passed. And it was an eye opener because I think a lot of second homeowners up here never thought that would happen. And, people don't realize too that you have to call South Lake your voter domicile before you can vote. So these second homeowners that were heavily impacted, the most impacted, they didn't have a say in this thing. And so that happened. And then the rest of the basin's like, whoa, okay, that's a little over the top. And they jumped right in though. To creating their own revised ordinances and so forth, and that includes the county. It took a couple of years before that happened, and of course we had to go through COVID for some of this to shake out. But it sort of was. I mean, it's huge, not just in the Tahoe Basin and the region, but around the state. Like watching what had happened in South Shore, and that's began the fight. I mean, we filed a lawsuit against Measure T. It passed in November of 18. We filed the lawsuit in December, and it wasn't until March of this year that we got a final answer on that.
Wow, so it's been ongoing for 7 years now.
That's right. Yep, 8 years of my life dedicated to this thing, and less than just the real estate community and more so on the contractor side of things. That's what struck a nerve for me, is all the blue collar construction families in this town that were affected indirectly.
Welcome back to the Tahoe Real Estate Insider Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Mark Salmon in South Lake Tahoe. Mark is a go-to real estate agent. He has been in South Lake for, since 1996 now, and has been a realtor since 2006. Is that right, Mark?
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about all things South Lake Tahoe and how the vacation rental policies and politics shape the housing market. Mark is well versed in all of this. So, Mark, let's start with let's just dive in real quick. For those who may not know you yet, can you share a little bit about your background, your work in Tahoe real estate, and how you became involved in the local policy issues in South Lake Tahoe?
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. And I grew up in San Diego, went to high school, graduated high school in 94, spent all 4 years of high school focused on architectural design. Thought that was going to be my career. That was my hope. But after graduating, grew up surfing, snowboarding a lot. That was a big transition into snowboarding right around then. It was getting super popular, and we were commuting all the way to Big Bear, and that was like 3.5 hours each way. And so that got old. I jumped into college right away, but I wasn't into it. And had some opportunities to actually go right to design school, but there was like a dress code and different things that had to be in play, and I wasn't for it. Long hair at the time, doing what I want, just kind of enjoyed my freedom. A buddy of mine says, "Hey, you want to go up to Tahoe for the winter?" I'd never been to Tahoe, and it's like, sure, let's do it. So went up, and the classic story, right? So I was a lift operator at Squaw Valley, and spent one winter in Truckee, and then knew of a buddy of mine that he graduated high school that lived on the South Shore. He's like, if you like Truckee, you should come check it out over here and actually be at the lake. So I came over to the South Shore, and I rented his couch for $100 a month until I found a place. And then a couple more buddies came up, and it was one of those, right? Like 1-bedroom apartment for $500 a month, and 4 guys living in there with mattresses all over the place and eating out of plastic bowls and silverware. But I had a Kirkwood pass, and
That's all that matters.
that's all that matters. Yeah. So I was working evenings bagging groceries so I could snowboard 100 days a year. And that didn't last long. That's not super sustainable, but it was it was a lot of fun. And then I ended up actually at that same grocery store. I met my soon to be my future wife, and we've been married 26 years now. So I mean, that was January of 97. So it was pretty immediate after just a couple winters up here. We connected and like jumped right in. And yeah, so the rest is history. I've been here for 30 years now, close to.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a similar story to myself as well. Came out here in 2018 after college, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I loved to snowboard. And so came to Tahoe, thought I'd be for a winter and then never left.
That's right.
And then met my wife, and it's an easy sell to get somebody to come out here. So luckily she came out here, and uh, we got married, shortly after meeting. Well, I say shortly, it's short for nowadays, um, but yeah, so similar story. But yeah, so this was back, came out in 96, 2006. You got your real estate license. Is that right?
Yeah, so in the interim in between there, it was the last place I was looking. I was looking for a job all over town. I doing the bag and groceries thing. That was just for some bucks to keep snowboarding. But I ended up at a local lumber yard. It was the last place I stopped, and they're like, we have some temporary work for you. And the cliff notes is that transitioned into a full-time position. And next thing you know, it's like you're running forklifts and stacking lumber. And then I was running the yard, and then transitioned into sales, contractor sales. And that was supply one, which we all called supply none. And then Meeks Lumber came in and bought that out. And Meeks was like the go-to lumber yard in town. So I took an outside sales position, and it was cool because it transitioned in from the architectural piece to learning lumber and learning construction. And the next thing you know, I'm selling lumber from Incline to Kirkwood, like all the biggest builders. And I ended up being, the top salesman in the West Coast for Meeks for a number of years. But I was listening and paying attention to guys and how they were building, how they were borrowing money and so forth. And so I jumped in and started, got into like Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, and kind of figuring out like how to borrow money. So we started building houses, and that went really, really well. And so I was making so much money there, a lot more than the lumber yard, that I quit the lumber yard, went in full time. And in listening to real estate agents and their lack of knowledge in construction, it was kind of irritating. It was like, you guys really don't know your product. And so I got my license to sell my stuff. And then that transitioned into the Great Recession. I was selling for a few people here and there, but really focused on my stuff. And then the Great Recession, right? The first and biggest recession of my life. And so that knocked me down a peg in the development world. And so I decided, I'm just going to sell real estate. That's easy, risk free. But then I was able to get all those same builders that I was supplying lumber to, and knew I could read a set of plans. And so I had immediate success because I had all those guys like, yeah, we want to work with you. You actually know what you're talking about. And the rest is history. I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Wow. What a smooth transition from bagging groceries now to the lumber yard, and then from the lumber yard into building, and then from building into real estate. I mean, that is such yeah, I'm with you there as far as, you just have that extra leg up knowing how the home is actually built, as opposed to, most folks who had never built their own home. Yeah, that's amazing. So when '08 hit, what was that like? And how did you navigate through that, and still, it's 2025 now, almost 2026, still a real estate agent. How did you navigate the murky waters of '08 and basically '08 to 2011?
Super challenging, very, very stressful, filled with anxiety every day. You really, I was young, you're in your 20s and you're making money no matter what, and you're borrowing money at crazy, like you're in the finance world. There's points where I was borrowing hard money at 12% and 4 points, and it didn't matter. You still made money. But that was what the problem was. And then like every teacher and firefighter, and I hate to just pick on those two, but everybody was like, I can do this. And we're buying 4 and 5 houses at a time and doing a lot of speculation. And it was super dangerous. But we still didn't think the bubble would ever burst. And it did. And that's just stuff you can't read in a textbook. And so I got stuck, and never had to foreclose on anything, but just lost a lot of money, and super stressed. And it took a long time to dig out of it. Dug some holes with that private money, and it took literally in some cases 10 years to pay people back. But everybody got paid back, whether it was conventional financing or it was, friends or investors or what have you. But just that knot in your stomach for all those years. But it's great because now I'm smart enough to keep some powder dry and not put myself in that situation, never get overextended again, what to leverage and what not to leverage. It just huge. And now I can share that with people too, those life lessons, right? And investors, and making sure they don't get in harm's way like that.
Totally. You come out stronger on the other side from it, and now you're able to share those lessons before somebody else has to go through them, which is great. I do want to circle back eventually at the end about what your thoughts are on the current market and where you see things going. I'd love to hear that insight from you. But let's hop into the big picture right now with South Lake Tahoe. What are the core issues surrounding short-term vacation rentals in South Lake Tahoe right now, both in the city and in the county, and moving forward to, I'm just going to say in South Lake. So for anybody listening, anytime we refer to South Lake, it's South Lake Tahoe. So um, locals never really say all the entire thing, but yeah, what are the core issues surrounding short-term vacation rentals in South Lake right now, both in the city and in the county?
Yeah, man, this is a big issue nationwide, very controversial. And South Lake Tahoe sort of kicked it off for the rest of the basin. We have 5 different jurisdictions. And even though it was talked about, it wasn't really until 2018 when a citizens driven ballot initiative hit to ban vacation rentals in the city of South Lake Tahoe, and that was Measure T. And people were upset. The nuisance was the big thing, just partiers. Living next, partying next to you while you got to get up and go to work the next morning. There was some rules and regulations, but no enforcement, and it got out of control. And people were forced to go there. And that was just in the city limits, right? So the South Lake Tahoe, you said city and county. We have 2 jurisdictions. We have an incorporated city that was just the city limits, nothing to do with the unincorporated that we refer to as the county. And it passed. And it was an eye opener because I think a lot of second homeowners up here never thought that would happen. And, people don't realize too that you have to call South Lake your voter domicile before you can vote. So these second homeowners that were heavily impacted, the most impacted, they didn't have a say in this thing. And so that happened. And then the rest of the basin's like, whoa, okay, that's a little over the top. And they jumped right in though. To creating their own revised ordinances and so forth, and that includes the county. It took a couple of years before that happened, and of course we had to go through COVID for some of this to shake out. But it sort of was. I mean, it's huge, not just in the Tahoe Basin and the region, around the state. Like watching what had happened in South Shore. That's began the fight. I mean, we filed a lawsuit against Measure T. It passed in November of 18. We filed the lawsuit in December, and it wasn't until March of this year that we got a final answer on that.
Wow, so it's been ongoing for 7 years now.
That's right. Yep, 8 years of my life dedicated to this thing, and less in just the real estate community and more so on the contractor side of things. That's what struck a nerve for me, is all the blue collar construction families in this town that were affected indirectly.
Yeah, let's peel back that onion a little bit. What exactly did that look like? So on the, at the surface level, you're somebody, let's say you're somebody listening to this and you're thinking about buying in Tahoe, right? And you've heard of Measure T, but you don't really know what's under the surface of that. You just saw that vacation rentals were affected in 2018, and now there's been this overturn in 2025. What were the underlying effects of the initial ruling in 2018?
Well, it would have been a lot worse. There was a lot of panic. The one good thing out of it was that we had until 21. So in 2021, whenever your vacation rental permit was due to renew, which was annual, you lost it. So it could have been anywhere from January to December. So at least you had some planning to do, right? To be able to say, what am I going to do? Am I going to work in the black market and say, screw it, I'll do whatever I want? Am I going to convert this into a long-term rental, which disallows my personal use and enjoyment? Or am I going to sell this property? And then March of 2020, COVID changes the whole landscape. I mean, what I think we would have seen was a pretty big sell-off and property values plummet. And instead, COVID comes in and props up the whole market, which when I'm sitting in my house like everybody else in 2020, I'm thinking my business is done. Like, what am I going to go to now? The world's done. We didn't know. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, people want to escape the city and they want to come up to the mountains and be away from the condensed, compacted COVID climate. And what better place to do it but up in Tahoe and still be able to work from home when they need to. All the commercial stuff shut down. They're up here in Tahoe. They got fresh mountain air, and the real estate just exploded. And so all those people had a way to get out. It's like, okay, well, do I want to gamble that this lawsuit's gonna work, or should I sell now while the market's thriving and a lot of people sold? And so it's COVID saved the day for Measure T and the fallout of losing vacation rentals.
Yeah, COVID was nuts, and it did prop up the market, certainly. So you had mentioned blue collar workers being affected by Measure T. What did that look like?
Yeah, it's people don't realize it was like this is a dig on second homeowners coming in and renting out our community, selling out our residential neighborhoods for commercial businesses. That was the rhetoric that was being pitched around, but people didn't realize it's like how builders are building houses not to become multimillionaires or sell out our neighborhoods. They just are working with uh, you know a fine line of profitability and desirability, and the rising construction costs, labor costs, permitting costs, tons of red tape with the TRPA, and they're just trying to survive in this town. And so they were negatively affected because it's like the baseline of profitability maybe be 800 plus $1,000 for a brand new home. That's certainly not going to, that's well beyond the means of our locals. So that's going to be second home buyers. And so those guys, the spec market just imploded. And it's like, so those guys either had to leave the area, go to an area that supported stuff like that, or work solely on build to suit, which is few and far between. So, and that chain reaction, it's that lumber yard, it's the paint, painters and subcontractors, but the paint stores, the local forklift driver. I mean, it's a trickle down effect is massive that people didn't
Mm.
see.
And construction's such a huge industry in Tahoe that, yeah, I can see now that you dive into that and peel that onion back a little bit more, I can certainly see how the trickle down effect would, yeah, just be crushing. What do you think the percentage decline was in the overall second home market was for builders? If you're at full capacity, pre-Measure T, post-Measure T, what's the percentage of capacity that you're at compared to the 100 it was initially at, you think?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, right? We get limited development from the TRPA. They distribute allocations every 2 years, and we had such high demand for building homes that there was a wait list, and then people were buying those commodities on the open market, or and spending. I mean, the values just kept going up and up and up, so that they could build today and capitalize on the market. And then post Measure T, there's a surplus of allocations available in the city and the county right now. There's no waiting list. There's always availability to build, 1 or 10 homes if you want, for that matter. So, um, all those permit fees and all that construction and tourism, which, let's be honest, is our only industry in this area,
Mhm.
dissipated greatly. And those bartenders and wait staff, servers and stuff that were promised all this cheap housing after Measure T, what they saw is a decline in revenue for themselves, income, because you didn't have the tourism up here, dining at their restaurants and so forth and spending money in this town. So I think it was an easy sell for them that you're going to get some cheap housing out of this, but you forgot about, you know,
Mm. Yeah, the downstream effects of that. Now, from your perspective, the short-term rental policies have evolved over the last few years. What's driving the ongoing tension between residents, owners, and local government?
yeah, I think that locals lost faith in our city to govern properly, to enforce these rules, and so they took matters into their own hands. And when you look at a guy like me and builders, real estate agents, it's like that we don't care. It's all about the mighty dollar and not considering, our local neighborhoods and so forth and how people live in this town. But I always just preach balance, just like the TRPA. We don't have unlimited development. And thank God in in Tahoe, it'd be a concrete jungle, but we don't want to be a national park either, right? So it's the same thing with vacation rentals. It's finding that happy medium. It's not an all or nothing situation. And so it's just that continued battle back and forth of preaching those things. I think more people are listening that, hey, we got to have rules and regulations. We got to have caps. We can't have too many of these things, but we also have to enforce those rules. And then let's, take the money from the tourists to help with the infrastructural things, the housing needs, the things that we need in this town. We can have both.
Yeah, certainly the balance, just like most things in life need balance. What motivated you personally to get involved? Was it your background? You know, you've spanned the spectrum of, you worked at the resorts when you first got to town. Now you're a very successful real estate agent, and then you've done, a lot of things in between. Was that a big part of what played a role in you getting involved? Was you just having that you're able to empathize with everybody in a way?
What's funny after going through that big economic downturn, considering that I'm a big property rights guy. So it's frustrating to have somebody tell me what I can and can't do with the property. And there's plenty of reasons things happen. Like maybe I buy a second home because I purely want a second home, but then my wife gets sick or my kids get sick or my parents get sick, something catastrophic in my life. And I need like a bridge loan essentially. And so I got to rent this place out so I can keep it. Maybe it's something that's a generational cabin that's been in my family, and this is the only way for me to make it work. Place that, you've gone to with your family for 40, 50 years. And then the way it was sold to the public to vote for this ban was just BS,
Yeah,
frankly.
how was that sold? What was the major selling points?
It was like, hey, you can't afford to live in this town. You're living off the hill right now and working up in Tahoe. But if you vote for this, then those people are going to they're not going to be able to short-term rent. They're going to long-term rent to you at a discounted market rate. So you're going to get into these big houses for cheap. Instead of your one bedroom that's got bad plumbing, we're going to get you into a 4 bedroom and, for $1,500 a month. And it was an easy sell. And then those guys are like, well, what do I have to lose by voting for this? Right. It's like, well, maybe that'll work.
Let's try it.
Yeah, but it didn't. And people don't realize too, like, especially, maybe at 2, 3% interest rates, but now look, right, we're at 6.5, 7% interest rates, maybe not quite seven, but people don't realize the risk that people take to buy homes up here and what the holding costs are. And then to be a landlord too in the state of California is absolutely brutal. So of course, none of that worked. But what would have worked is let's capitalize on all that tax money coming from vacation rentals and let's fund affordable housing with that instead. And let's maintain tourism so that you, Mr. Bartender, can make even more money. And now we got a place to put you too on the tourist dollar. But
Right.
again, yeah,
It
they
is
didn't listen to that
interesting.
side.
That is an interesting point you make because, yeah, it sounds good in theory, and then next thing you know, because you're right, being on the financing side on our end, people are taking on, in some instances, a lot of risk to buy properties in Tahoe. And if they don't have the opportunity to cover that risk through some form of rental that is at a market rate, especially if they bought at market rates and then that rug gets pulled out from under them, they're in a heap of trouble. And uh, what we often see too is, I know in Truckee, there's a process you have to go through to get a short-term rental, and there was a lot of publicity around, hey, we should limit these or ban these. And in Incline, it's in Washoe County, so there's really, it's who you can get a permit if you want, right? In Incline, I know um, there were a ton of short-term rentals being bought and run during COVID, but now because there was such an influx back then, now the market has settled because people are going back to work. They're not working remote. People aren't coming up as more just due to the change in the economy. And so now a lot of those people that maybe bought with a price point at the height of the market and then tried to short-term rent, and maybe they weren't, top 10 on Airbnb, right? So their property's not showing up first. Um, there's repercussions for that now. So the market's kind of had this leveling out effect, and it's due to the fact that they allowed things to play out, and they didn't try to force the hand. So now, all the dust is settled, and it's like, well, the free market's taking it's doing what it needs to do, right? So it's interesting to hear the opposite side of that from your point of view. What have been the biggest challenges in pushing back against Measure T? I know things have kind of come to an end here this year, but what were the biggest challenges throughout the pushback on your end? Both, what were some legal hurdles, maybe some public perception hurdles, or some political pressures that you were facing as you led the charge?
Yeah, when you dive into this, you've got to realize that a lot of the crowd is not going to be happy with you, and you got to make that decision for what you believe in and go for it. And so that was tough. There was some fallout just locally, having your name in articles, um, and painted in a bad way. Um, People not knowing the background that I just pitched, right? Living in the 1 bedroom apartment on the floor and you're working your way up. There was no handouts. So the school of hard knocks and grinding to get there. They don't see that. They don't know your backstory. Suddenly you're this, rich realtor that's just trying to sell out the community, doesn't care versus like someone that not just that, but raised 2 kids in this town, right? That in their 20s now. I coach soccer at the high school, create a local soccer club and develop a local tournament that raise money for our community. No, that's not in the newspaper.
No.
Just greedy realtor and his big builder guy, and builders in general that don't care. So that was a hurdle. That was tough. And then learning the legal world. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't do it again. You hear this is going to be 150 grand. You're looking at about 12 to 18 months to shake out. And or like $750,000 in legal fees in 8 years to shake out, and going through the trial process and then the appellate court and then back to the trial process and dealing with the city and depositions. And again, having your name strung out through all this and feeling attacked too by the city. I really did, who had to defend Measure T. We had to sue the city, not the people that drafted Measure T. So that was tough. And I've got friends over there too in the city, but it just felt like it was challenging, but it's what I believed in. And in the end, we prevailed. It was not proven unconstitutional, and it wasn't until March of this year that it finally shook out and we were victorious.
Well, good for you for standing up for what you believe, and I believe it's becoming more of a lost art every single day in a lot of instances. Um, so I know we mentioned it had just it's kind of come to an end now. Where does the lawsuit stand exactly today, and what do you believe that is the best path forward for regulating short-term rentals in a balanced way?
Yeah, so we win the lawsuit in March. By April, the city council is talking about the new ordinance. What's this going to look like? What do we need to do? So we have a clean slate, an opportunity to write this correctly, and went right back to the same antics and issues. And even though we took the time to talk to all these council members individually, we knew 3 out of 5 were basically on our side. We thought we'd have no issues crafting something that would be sustainable. And it still was chaotic month after month. They basically rolled it out and said, look, those that lost their permit in 21, if you still own real estate, you're preferred, right? You're going to get an opportunity to get your permit back right away. But then they implemented this buffer, which has been common place in around the country. So 150-foot buffer comes into play. So if somebody has a vacation rental within 150 feet of you, then you can't get yours. And they overlap those with this preferred folks getting their permits back for 60 days. And so a lot of those folks then they got buffered out by their neighbor who went through the process a little quicker than they did. So then we fought and pushed to try to eliminate this buffer from April until current. And we finally convinced council this was a bad idea. You're pitting neighbor against neighbor, a lot of different layers of problems for this. And they bought into it. They approved the motion to remove this. And then we run into issues with our mayor and some criminal activity, some things going on. And so that didn't get fully approved or passed after the first reading. We're back to the buffer, and we're dealing with that right now. So even though you're allowed a permit in this town, in the city, you're dealing with that buffer and some other sort of complications and layers to deal with.
So were you seeing some neighbor? I mean, uh, let's say I have the ability to go get my short-term rental permit back, right? I own a home in South Lake. If you're my neighbor and I beat you to the punch, you're done. You're out. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. And then how are you going to feel about your neighbor? Let's say you applied before me.
Well, I probably knew that you had the opportunity also, right? And I knew that if I beat you to it, then you probably weren't going to have the opportunity because I want to get mine. I think that's human nature.
Now
I,
let's pretend that you're a hater on vacation rentals. So you actually don't intend to use this. You're solely doing it to block me because you knew that I was going to attempt this, right? You've known this neighbor before. You guys have lived next to each other for all the way through this whole deal. So that a lot of that was happening too. But let's say that yours is legit, and mine was too. And you applied, or I applied first, then you applied after. But the inspections didn't go well, and for some reason you got your permit first. Now I'm upset, and I'm looking at you very closely now about your house. Like that chimney doesn't look to code, or whatever, right?
you're
So
starting to nitpick, man.
I'm going to be aggressive. I'm coming after your permit because I know once you lose it, if you get a 3 strikes, you're out for life that you own the property. And then I slip in and I get my permit. So I'm going to be aggressive with you. I'm going to ask my other neighbors and friends, you got to call on this guy. I want to get this guy out of here. That's part of the problem with the buffer that they listen to. But of course, there's backdoor lobbying and different reasons why council members vote for things. And that's extra frustration in politics.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. I know recently uh, South Lake's mayor resigned due to embezzlement charges, and the mayor pro tem stepping in had his own, publicly reported battles. How has this leadership turmoil affected public trust in local government?
Brutal. You ask yourself, so yeah, Mayor Wallace got caught for embezzling money from a local church that didn't even belong to. She actually runs an accounting service as a side business and had been doing that and embezzled money from that church until that hit the papers. Well, when it hit the papers, come to find out she had had an issue with insurance fraud years prior before she got into office. And so how? How do you get into office with that? Who's not doing the background checks? Is this not the job of local government to check that out? How is it that everybody that drilled her as she was at the podium trying to run for office didn't catch this and do the research? And so people don't already trust politicians. Then you throw something like that in. So that hits the newspaper. And literally the next article the same day is the backup mayor, the mayor pro tem, is on his second bout of criminal activity. He had already been in trouble for being stopped in his vehicle during the Caldor fire in possession of MDMA, ketamine. He was asleep in his autonomous Tesla, and that got sort of swept under the rug. Now he's battling with a local bouncer at a local bar. And that article hits as he had criminal charges for assault and trespassing on the same day as our mayor. And so people are like, really? These are the ones making decisions for our community? Yeah, hard to trust anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that would lead to a dissolution of trust, certainly. So, and you've been actively watching and participating in the local politics. What's your read on how the community's feeling right now?
What that did was that created, you want an uneven number of council members. So obviously votes are not stalemates. But right now, losing her, it's like, can we get another somebody in there for the interim until we get into the elections next year? And so that's the process now. Both parties are, so essentially we're a 2-2 draw in the council right now. So nothing's going to get accomplished on this topic for months. And if you get somebody in to fill that void for Mayor Wallace, both sides, it's 2-2, are looking at it like, do we know this person well enough to know they're going to be on our side and vice versa? So 26 applicants come to the table. None of them are going to get voted in. Once we get past December 12th, that option for the interim position's gone. We're looking to next June in order to go to a public election. And then city council takes July off. So this topic is not going to be resolved until next fall. We're a year out.
Well, so it could be a continual stalemate for quite some time.
That's right.
I feel like you're running through the latest episode of Survivor right now. So
You can't make this stuff up. It's wild. And I stay involved because you still cling to hope. We honestly didn't think we'd win this lawsuit the way it was headed. And so once you do, it's like, well, we could almost win anything. And this is right. And we're right on the edge of a good transition here. for our town, which is a ghost town right now. And that's a good segue into the current market too, but it's very quiet.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what the current market looks like right now or what the town looks like, and then what do you think it could look like if these policies are that, you'd like to put into place are put into place? What do you think the contrast there looks like?
It's interesting times in general right now, right? With national politics. You wake up every day just, you know, wondering what's next and what the fallout's going to look like. We've got increased red tape and costs associated with building in this town as it is, and insurance and interest rates and economic volatility and so forth. So a lot of guys have just sort of paused on building or paused on buying. And it's certainly a buyer's market right now. It's interesting. Some people will tell you we're in the recession right now, but a lot won't admit to it. And we're in the shoulder season right now in Tahoe, which is already quiet. But if you add all those different layers in, it's exceptionally quiet right now. And luckily, when you see this map sort of fill out with vacation rentals, because we're watching the buffers and so forth, at least people are getting those permits and creating additional activity that I think will transition into this winter, the high season, and it'll look good. And we'll start to fill our restaurants again and so forth. But there's no way 23,000 locals are going to keep. I mean, we have a lot of businesses in this town, 6 different grocery stores. We can't keep that all alive on our own. So what I see is that, yeah, at least this is the glass half full as we're getting these permits and we're getting more people coming to town. And then hopefully we can utilize those funds to address all these other issues that we obviously have on the table as well. But it's a lot easier to do with some money in the quivers.
Yeah, certainly, and more business activity through increased traffic from tourism. What do what qualities does South Lake Tahoe need in its leadership moving forward to succeed through all of this?
Well, honesty and integrity would be helpful. But also too, just like any politics, this backdoor lobbying, and we know it's happening with a couple of the council members, the assumption it happens with all of them, but recognizing the balance, like we talked about early in the conversation, right? Um, we need to worry about vehicle miles traveled and air pollution and people coming to this town and leaving it, trashing the place and so forth. We need to worry about infrastructural issues, road quality and housing and, all kinds of stuff. But we also need to recognize that, tourism is all we have and we have to support it the best we can. And then we have to take that money and balance out all these other things. You look at toll bridges down in the bay and so forth. It's like, yeah, if we're worried about day trippers, then let's make them pay for it. I love that idea. It's like, yeah, hey, if you're going to bring all your food into town with a fully fueled car and trash our beach and go home, you're at least going to have to pay $50 to do it, that we can use that money. I mean, something, but let's start with just supporting tourism. We can't send out there with picket signs saying go home and think we're going to survive up here. It's challenging enough.
Certainly. Now, Tahoe in general is a vibrant, very vibrant community, strong community. So despite all this turmoil in South Lake, where do you see the biggest opportunities for positive change in the near future, aside from implementing new policies around what's going on with Measure T?
Yeah, it is always going to be a world-class destination, and we have a finite supply of real estate, and it's just going to be a draw for folks. 16 different ski resorts, and we have this beautiful lake with 70 plus feet of clarity and so forth. So it's again, there's always going to be a reason to come to Tahoe, to invest in Tahoe, to invest in a lifestyle, and hopefully we just get away from all these videos and photos and so forth showing us with traffic jams and people piled up trying to get up to Heavenly and trash on the beach and things like that. So again, we just need to come together just like we do in this country. We're so divided. Everything's 50-50. Come together, pull the extremes into the middle and be environmentally sensitive, but yet be economically sensible at the same time. You can have your cake and eat it too in this town. You can live here and enjoy all this too and not feel like the tourists are overwhelming us, but we're still going to utilize their dollars to have the things that we need with our infrastructure in this community. It'll be sustainable for a long time.
Certainly. If you could wave a magic wand and implement a certain policy or certain structural change right now to improve South Lake Tahoe, what would you do? What would that magic wand do?
Not purely on the VHR side, because you
Any
know
anything.
yeah. Well, the VHR thing, all we were saying, let's just put a cap on it. But you brought up a good point earlier about how the free market just sort of works itself out. And that's what I've tried to explain too. There's a natural equilibrium that happens with these permits. So you don't need to draw a line in the sand. The market will do it for you, because all of a sudden, like, you hit a point of saturation and then it's like, well, that model doesn't work anymore. And people realize that. So I'm not going to dive into that and get 2% return and compete with everybody and have to drop my rates and all this stuff. We'll need to recognize too, this has never been a pure investment purchase for real estate in Lake Tahoe, right? It's got to be a little bit of that to cover some debt service, be smart in that, but also it's pure lifestyle, and looking at what we have up here and sharpening the axe for people that come up and love, mountain biking and skiing and boating and things like that. So, the magic wand, yeah, I'd come up with something too for the traffic situation that we have as well. Though we got to encourage people with that whole carpooling situation. Maybe that ties into some sort of toll or what have you. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different topics too that I would wave that wand at, but I'd probably start there.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to do another one of these and dive deeper into the multiple issues we talked about and the multiple things I can do to solve those issues. But yeah, where can listeners follow your work and learn more about the issues you're engaged with? And then on the real estate side, where can people who want to work with you go to contact you and reach out to learn more about what you can do for them?
Yeah, the best thing is to go to my website, tahoesalmon.com, and that's where you saw me first, and the meat mark video, and updated information, relevant information, and then reach out and let's talk about some of these things, the future of the market, the current climate. I'm also doing stuff with outside television stuff, trying to talk local politics, trying to talk about the market as much as possible. And so you can check me out on there too, and trying to transition, do more of that type of stuff into YouTube and so forth, and podcasts like this, which is a great opportunity to talk about these things. If people want to listen to it, it's good information.
Yeah. And that is always one of the things that people want to listen to. But I know we'll put this podcast up. It'll go on my YouTube. I'll also give it to you to put wherever you want to put it. And sometimes these videos get 50 views, sometimes they get 500, sometimes they get a couple thousand, but that's 50 more people than previously would have listened, right? So um, there's always some opportunity there to hear people speak and hear different ideas. So I do want to circle back though. Originally, earlier on, we were talking about the current market, or sorry, the previous market. What do you think the current market's headed as far as real estate goes in the Tahoe Basin? I
Well,
know it's a tough question.
I'm nervous, I really am. I mean, there's a part of it where you think, well, maybe rates will drop again to sort of combat potential inflation and so forth, and that'll be healthy for real estate, that people will want to invest into tangible assets, whether it be precious metals or it be real estate. Um, but it is sketchy right now, and there's a lot of turmoil at the national level. We just wonder again, is a war imminent, or what direction are we headed? But then you look at the AI movement, right, in the Bay Area, and that's the market that buys our homes, and it's thriving. And I'm seeing article after article about the Bay Area real estate market doing well. And usually we're like 3 to 6 months behind that. So again, if things come together well, we have a strong winter and the economy's strong in our feeder market. We got 8 million people within a half day's drive, then that will prop us up again. And back to the finite supply. I mean, to clear our entire market on the South Shore, which is the largest area of the basin, would only take to sell 130 homes. So it doesn't take that many buyers, and then all of a sudden we're back into a seller's market or a neutral market. So that's the glass half full. But there's a lot of other things that can go haywire, as we're seeing daily.
Certainly. Certainly. And it is interesting to look at the growth of the Bay again, because back during COVID, I thought the place was near death and everyone was leaving. No one wanted to be, not, I wouldn't say no one wanted to be in the Bay, but it was popular to get out and go somewhere else. And now to see it revitalize, and I mean, it's been a quick turnaround, right? Only a couple of years, and here we are. The Bay Area is the place to be again. Um, although we have seen a big effect of back to office protocols having an effect on the housing market in Tahoe. Because of course, if you can't, I mean, everyone would love to work from Tahoe. So if you have to be back in the office, it does have an effect. But I'm with you. I'm optimistic. There's a lot of levers that are pulled, nationally that can affect what happens. But I'm optimistic, and I think even worst case, if rates stay high and prices kind of flatline or even decrease a little bit, um, hopefully it allows people some more time, especially some locals and people that are looking to buy maybe in the valley, first time home buyers, what have you, right? Maybe it allows them some time to save up for a bit of a down payment and get into the market. Because having that the bottom of the feeder system for first time home buyers and things like that is super important to keep the overall health of the total housing market flowing. So Mark, I appreciate you hopping on. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we stop the recording here?
And those are all good points too. And that's why, if you're good at what you do, you just transition. Doesn't matter if the economy's strong, seller's market, buyer's market, um, you represent the other side of it. And to your point, get in some first time home buyers and help those folks. And so, yeah, you turn lemons into lemonade, and there's always a way to look at things on the positive side. So no matter where the market goes.
100%. 100%. Well, thank you for taking the time again. I so appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of your day, good rest of your week. Enjoy this winter. Hope you get out and get some good turns in. Hopefully we have a great winter. So, yeah, thanks again for hopping on, and we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, appreciate the time, Shay, for sure. And hopefully we'll get some turns in together. And yeah, pray for snow, and enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday, man. Thanks for the chance here.
Thank you. You too.
All right, buddy.